waste and abuse that has run through USAID over the past several years, these are some of the insane priorities that organization has been spending money on.
The pride flag has long replaced the cross of Christ in the Episcopal Church, and I use the word church only in the architectural sense.
What would you do if you discovered your church donations were funding political activism instead of helping those in need? That's exactly what happened with Bishop Buddy's $53 million USAID windfall. Today, we're breaking down the money trail document by document, showing you exactly how funds meant for humanitarian aid mysteriously disappeared into vague administrative costs and undocumented consulting fees.
The Episcopal Church, as you probably know, is the wokest institution on earth. I mean, the Episcopal Church makes Planned Parenthood seem far right by comparison.
The financial web we've uncovered will make you question everything you've heard about this so-called champion of social justice. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now, back to the video. It started with a hunch. Late one night, Karoline Leavitt was sifting through obscure government spending records when something caught her eye. She blinked, checked the figures again, and felt her heart rate quicken. There it was, hiding in plain sight. A trail of suspicious transactions totaling an astonishing $53 million in taxpayer money, all connected to Bishop Buddy's organization. Picture this, Leavitt at her desk, surrounded by stacks of financial printouts from usspending.gov. Her computer screen glowing with highlighted transactions, coffee cups piling up as the hours ticked by. What began as routine research quickly transformed into something far more disturbing. Federal grants, earmarked for humanitarian assistance, were vanishing into a bureaucratic black hole. I remember thinking, this can't possibly be legal. Leavitt would later recall, how does this much money just disappear without anyone noticing? The deeper she dug, the worse it got. The financial documents revealed grant applications approved with shocking speed, sometimes within days, while similar organizations waited months or years for much smaller amounts. Bishop Buddy's operation wasn't just receiving funds, they were being fast-tracked through the system by someone with serious influence.
Evil had a face and a haircut. This is what it would look like. It would look exactly like Marianne Buddy.
But here's what really raised alarm bells. The money trail completely disintegrated after reaching Buddy's main organization. No detailed expense reports, no specific allocation records, just vague, meaningless categories like program initiatives and community outreach efforts. Classic accounting smokescreens designed to obscure rather than clarify. One particularly troubling entry listed $4.7 million for administrative consulting services without a single invoice or explanation of what services were actually provided. Another showed $3.2 million for digital resource development with zero documentation of any digital resources actually created. The pattern was unmistakable, millions flowing in, nothing tangible coming out.
$0.5 million to advance DEI in Serbia's workplaces, $70,000 for a production of a DEI musical in Ireland.
The most shocking discovery came when Leavitt cross-referenced the government database entries with state and corporation records. Organizations connected to Bishop Buddy were systematically changing their names within weeks of receiving major grants. The Gospel Light Lutheran Ministry would suddenly become Lighthouse Faith Network, then transform into Beacon of Hope Ministries. Same people, same addresses, different names. This wasn't coincidence. It was a deliberate strategy to fragment the paper trail.
She's talking about behaviors, and she's cloaking these behaviors under the false guise of compassion.
Even more suspicious, these name changes weren't filed properly with all government agencies, creating conflicting records across different databases. Tax ID numbers would remain the same while names changed, or vice versa, creating a bureaucratic nightmare for anyone trying to follow the money. The perfect cover for financial misconduct. What made these findings truly damning wasn't just the dollar amount, though $53 million is certainly nothing to sneeze at. It was the methodical, calculated way the entire operation was structured. This wasn't sloppy bookkeeping or administrative oversight. The records showed a sophisticated operation designed specifically to prevent transparency.
She's not defending sinners or the poor. She's not like Jesus. She's talking about behaviors. And she's cloaking these behaviors.
When you look at these records as a whole, explained former federal auditor James Morrison, you see a systematic pattern of obfuscation spanning years. This isn't a few accounting errors. This is deliberate financial manipulation designed to prevent anyone from tracking where taxpayer money actually went. As Leavitt connected more dots, the picture grew increasingly disturbing. She discovered that while Bishop Buddy made passionate public speeches about helping immigrants and LGBTQ+ youth, the financial records told a completely different story. When traced to their endpoints, the bulk of these funds weren't reaching vulnerable populations at all. Instead, they were disappearing into the nebulous category of administrative costs, the classic black hole of nonprofit finance where money can vanish without a trace. In one particularly egregious example, a $7.2 million grant earmarked specifically for immigrant youth services showed less than $340,000 actually spent on direct assistance. The remaining 95% was classified under various administrative categories with no verification mechanism whatsoever. The question that kept Leavitt up at night wasn't just where the money went, but how this operation had continued unchecked for so long. Federal oversight agencies had completely failed to notice these red flags, despite them being hidden in plain sight in public databases. Someone had to be protecting this operation from within the system, Leavitt concluded. There's no other explanation for how these grants kept flowing year after year with zero accountability. While government insiders looked the other way, Bishop Buddy was orchestrating a financial sleight of hand that would make Wall Street executives jealous. What happens when $53 million in taxpayer money vanishes into a maze of constantly renamed churches that all share the same addresses, board members, and bank accounts? The truth about this unholy financial alliance reveals how sacred institutions became the perfect cover for one of the most brazen money laundering operations in recent memory.
Waste and abuse that has run through USAID over the past several years, these are some of the insane priorities that organization has been spending money on.
Bishop Buddy didn't just create a single religious front, she constructed an entire ecclesiastical empire. Her network of Lutheran churches functioned less like places of worship and more like financial shell companies. Investigators were stunned when they discovered the intricate web she had woven, specifically designed to make government money disappear without a trace.
I don't know about you, but as an American taxpayer, I don't want my dollars going towards this crap, and I know the American people don't either.
These weren't your grandmother's churches either. Many prominently displayed LGBTQ+ flags out front and operated more like political action centers than traditional religious institutions. The progressive imagery served a clever dual purpose. It deflected suspicion by appearing to champion marginalized communities while simultaneously making any criticism of the financial operations appear like an attack on social justice causes. A whistleblower who worked within Buddy's organization exposed the calculated nature of this scheme. Internal documents instructed staff to ensure all payments fall within general expense categories, and most damning of all, to do not specify funding origins. These weren't accidental accounting errors. This was a deliberate strategy to obscure the money trail.
Woke pastor idiot that was lecturing Trump to his face about refugees and immigrants and lesbian and transgender people. Well, she has just been exposed.
The financial engineering behind this operation was surprisingly sophisticated. Money would flow from USAID directly to Buddy's main organization, appearing legitimate at first glance. But then came the magic trick. Those funds would scatter across dozens of supposedly separate church entities, fragmenting the trail until it became virtually impossible for auditors to follow. This elaborate church network wasn't designed to spread faith. It was designed to spread money in ways that couldn't be easily traced, explained one financial crimes investigator who requested anonymity due to the ongoing nature of the case. What made this scheme particularly brilliant was how it exploited the special status churches enjoy under our legal system. Religious protection laws shield churches from many of the financial reporting requirements that secular nonprofits must follow. While most legitimate religious organizations use these protections to practice their faith freely, Buddy used them as a convenient loophole to operate with minimal financial transparency. But the most shocking revelation came when investigators dug deeper into these supposedly independent church networks. Despite having different names on paper, many shared the exact same board members, physical addresses, and most incriminating of all, the same bank accounts. This wasn't a collection of separate religious entities, it was a single organization wearing multiple masks. In one particularly brazen example, 3 supposedly distinct Lutheran ministries, Rainbow Faith Outreach, Progressive Lutheran Action Network, and Inclusive Gospel Ministry, all listed their headquarters at the same small office suite in a suburban strip mall. All 3 received separate government grants totaling over $2.3 million, yet had identical leadership teams and shared a single checking account at First National Bank.
The pride flag has long replaced the cross of Christ in the Episcopal Church, and I use the word church only in the architectural sense.
The genius of Buddy's scheme was in its simplicity. Money would enter one church, be transferred internally to another church with a different name, then move again to a third entity, creating a dizzying paper trail that few investigators would have the resources or patience to unravel. By the time the funds reached their final destination, they appeared to have passed through legitimate channels, effectively laundered of any connection to their government origins. It's actually quite brilliant from a financial engineering standpoint, admitted one former federal prosecutor who reviewed the case details. By creating this shell game of constantly renaming organizations and shuffling money between them, Buddy made it nearly impossible to track where the funds ultimately went. The religious aspect provided the perfect cover, because who wants to be accused of attacking churches? Bank records revealed another troubling pattern. Within days of large deposits from government grants, significant withdrawals would occur, often in amounts just under the threshold that would trigger automatic reporting requirements. These funds would then disappear into a network of personal accounts and consulting firms with vague names like Community Vision Partners and Progressive Policy Solutions. Those suspicious withdrawals were just the tip of the iceberg.
A woman over 50 with a lesbian haircut is sure to support the most evil ideas and policies that mankind has ever conceived.
What happened when independent auditors finally tracked where the money actually went? The numbers didn't just tell a story of financial misconduct. They revealed a betrayal so complete that even Bishop Buddy's most devoted supporters couldn't defend her anymore. While the public was still digesting the shocking revelations about the church network, an independent financial watchdog organization had been silently piecing together the entire puzzle. Working methodically through mountains of financial records, they were about to drop a bombshell that would shatter Bishop Buddy's carefully crafted public image. The independent audit didn't just confirm what was already suspected, it uncovered something far more damning. Hidden beneath the surface of official financial statements was an entirely separate ledger, one never meant to see the light of day. This secret bookkeeping showed payments flowing directly to media strategists and political organizers, individuals who had absolutely nothing to do with humanitarian work or immigrant assistance. Think about this for a second. While Bishop Buddy was standing at podiums tearfully describing the plight of marginalized communities, the money that was supposed to help those exact communities was being funneled straight into political activism. The very people she claimed to champion were receiving only pennies on the dollar of the funding meant for them. You'd expect at least some of the $53 million to reach its intended recipients, right? Wrong. The audit made this painfully clear. Only a tiny fraction, we're talking single-digit percentages, of those taxpayer millions had actually gone toward direct aid to immigrants or LGBTQ+ youth.
Actual authority to block criticism because she's a bishop. Don't argue with a bishop, she's a bishop. And it comes from a long history of this.
The rest, diverted through a maze of transactions that ultimately benefited Bishop Buddy's political agenda. But here's what makes this story even more outrageous. Even as questions mounted about her financial practices, Bishop Buddy continued making public appearances, claiming these investigations were nothing but politically motivated attacks against her progressive values. She wrapped herself in the flag of social justice, while the real justice, financial accountability, was closing in around her.
And the churches themselves are often quite beautiful. Architecturally, everything that happens inside those churches is hideous.
The audit revealed millions in so-called consulting fees with absolutely zero documentation, no contracts, no deliverables, no explanation of what services were supposedly provided, just money disappearing into a black hole of vague descriptions and unnamed recipients. These weren't simple accounting errors. This was systematic financial deception on a massive scale. When the audit findings began circulating among government officials and eventually to the press, something interesting happened. Bishop Buddy, who had never been camera shy before, suddenly vanished from public view. The woman who had been front and center defending herself against attacks on her values was nowhere to be found. Instead, her lawyer stepped in, issuing carefully worded statements that never actually addressed the specific allegations in the audit. What makes this betrayal so complete isn't just the misappropriation of funds, it's the exploitation of trust. Bishop Buddy didn't just mismanage government grants, she deliberately used vulnerable communities as shields for her financial schemes. She positioned herself as their champion, while simultaneously diverting resources that should have improved their lives. Even longtime supporters couldn't ignore the evidence anymore. This wasn't about political differences or ideological disagreements. The audit numbers told a story that transcended politics. This was about the fundamental betrayal of public trust. When documentation shows that money meant for homeless immigrant youth instead paid for political consultants, there's no defending that, regardless of political affiliation.
It's the people she's defending. Does she have any evidence that children are in danger by this new administration, the administration that is trying to rescue missing kids?
The independent audit provided something that had been missing in this investigation: irrefutable proof, not speculation, not partisan accusations, but cold, hard financial data that showed precisely how the system had been manipulated. This wasn't just smoking gun evidence, it was a full-scale artillery barrage of financial impropriety that couldn't be explained away. For those who had defended Bishop Buddy through the initial allegations, the audit was a brutal reality check. Many had genuinely believed in her mission and had dismissed early concerns as political attacks. Now they faced an uncomfortable truth: they had been used as unwitting accomplices in a massive financial shell game. The walls are finally closing in on this scandal as Washington lawmakers have taken notice.
I appreciate that when it comes to the federal government, because it seems like all common sense has been lost in this city, and that's what you see when you look at USAid.
Calls for a full congressional investigation have reached Capitol Hill, with elected officials now publicly demanding answers about where all that money really went. This isn't just Karoline Leavitt asking questions anymore, this has escalated to the highest levels of government. What's truly shocking is that Bishop Buddy's case might just be the tip of the iceberg. How many other organizations are operating under similar schemes right now, siphoning your tax dollars while pretending to serve communities in need? The system that allowed this to happen remains largely intact. The hard truth is that until someone faces real consequences, this pattern will continue. Your money, billions of your hard-earned dollars, could be funding political activism disguised as charity work across the country. As this investigation moves to Congress, remember that accountability only happens when the public demands it. Will anyone actually face justice? That remains to be seen.